to Pentellectual Conversations. You've just stepped into a space where the mind meets the soul. A place where poetry and conversation collab to form a silky, smooth vibe that flows like smooth jazz. Dope poetry, deep dialogue, and unapologetically real energy. So pour your favorite drink, light one up if that's your rhythm, and let the world outside melt away. So sit back, relax, and let's get into tonight's hot topic.
What's good? What's good? What's good? Welcome back to another episode of Pentellectual Conversations, where dope poetry, deep dialogue, and unapologetically real energy will always reside. Tonight, we're stepping into a different kind of artistry. Our guest, Tabin, is a classical improvisational pianist and multi-instrumentalist whose relationship with music goes beyond simply knowing how to play an instrument. For Tabin, music is also about expression, communication, access, and creating spaces where everybody has an opportunity to learn. Along with being a musician, Tabor specializes in inclusive education, both within music and higher education, helping challenge the idea that creativity, learning, or musical excellence should only be accessible to a select few. So tonight, we're going to talk about the person behind the piano, the person behind the pen, the journey behind the music, the freedom of improv, and what it means to be a multi instrumentalist, and how education can become more inclusive without sacrificing the excellence. So, Pentellectual family, my pen pals, please help me welcome Tabin. What's
Thank you. Thank you for
up?
having me.
Oh man, I'm really excited about this interview, man. But before we talk about the music, the poetry, y'all, the fire dancing, and especially the inclusive education, I want to talk about, you know, who were you growing up? What did you see yourself growing up? This is what you were gonna do.
My pathway growing up was filled with lots and lots of changes. So, I went from wanting to be an astronaut, as I think a lot of kids do, to them wanting to become a pharmacist. I ended up studying a little bit of nursing before going on to engineering. From a career pathway perspective, I didn't really have a clear, this is what I want to do when I grow up. But I was always the kind of kid that had their nose in a book and was quite a bit of a nerd, I guess, in a lot of ways. um, and I suppose that hasn't really changed because I've stayed in the kind of higher education system for a long time now. So it's all kind of been a pathway. I wouldn't say that there's necessarily been a moment where I've specifically gone, this is who I want to be, or rather, not necessarily what I want to be when I grow up, but I have had a pretty clear idea of who I want to be as I grow up. And that I think is more important. You can find opportunities anywhere if you know who you are.
What kind of household did you grow up in, and how much of a presence did music and art have in it?
So my story is kind of winding. I was born in the US and then I was brought to Australia when I was 2. So I was raised by older members of my family, and so my musical landscape was very much dominated by music from the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And so I have this really interesting kind of section of knowledge where I've got a good understanding of the old. And then, as I stepped into like listening to things on the radio and engaging with music, while I was learning it, then I ended up with this knowledge of like classical music all the way down here and the more modern stuff as well. I would say that I particularly enjoy classical music, but perhaps I am minorly more of a metal fan. So that's my kind of musical background. Um, my household was very supportive of me engaging in music. I was able to practice an hour a day, which, as I've gone into teaching and engaging in that educative space, I've realized that that's quite a privileged position to have that time to be able to dedicate to music. So that's a little bit about my musical landscape growing up. You know, yeah.
So were you naturally gifted musically as a child, or like were you somebody who had to really, really work in developing your abilities?
Oh, I remember I had done piano lessons for potentially like more than, well, I'd gotten past the beginner stage, and
Okay.
there was a point at which there was a real discussion around whether I should continue with piano or not. So it's definitely something that I've had to work at. I think um, that that moment where it actually clicked was really transformative for me. And I've kind of found it to be an acceleration process. You know, I started out fairly slowly, honestly. But then as I've gotten older and I've learned more about learning, I've learned more about how to work with my brain instead of against it.
Mm.
Um, that rate of progress has gotten better, you know. So yeah.
Now, you are a multi-instrumentalist. So that to me, that means you play a lot more than just the piano. So
Yes, piano is my strongest instrument. Um, but I also play guitar and a little bit of bass and a little bit of drums. So, you know,
you're your
and
own
it's
band.
and it's mostly for exactly that reason. As part of the thesis that I'm completing, I'm making some music, and being able to create all the layers of that just really came in very handy to make it so that it was entirely my own work. It does mean that it's very difficult to perform it on stage, however.
So would you say of all the instruments that you play that the piano would probably be the one that mostly sounds like your voice?
Oh, look, I would say yes, but I think the guitar comes a very close second, and it's
Mm.
only because I've just been doing the piano longer. It's an instrument that I'm very familiar with, and you know, at a certain point when you're learning an instrument, it becomes an extension of yourself. You know, your brain starts mapping it the way that it maps a part of you. And I would say that, you know, perhaps I'm not quite there with the guitar yet, but it's definitely a love story that involves multiple instruments.
A random question about your instruments. If somebody told you that for the rest of your life you could only keep one instrument, what are you saving and which instrument are you apologizing to first?
Oh, so again, it becomes this really close tie between piano and guitar. I've been doing guitar for a lot less time, but you know, it's something that I really enjoy in a way that the piano I enjoy differently, if that makes sense. So I think I'm apologizing first to my piano and maybe I'm keeping the guitar because it's that process of learning that I really, really enjoy. And there's also the fact that I can sing and play the guitar at the same time. I've never spent the time to be able to learn that skill with the piano.
Hmm. I can't sing and play the air guitar, so I know damn well that'll be too hard for me. Um, Let's move on a little bit before we get to the real reason why people are tuning in, because we're talking about music, everybody, but this is also a poet. So I'm really, really, really looking forward to that. But when people hear the words classical pianist, immediately I know they think structure, sheet music, rules, all that precision. And then we add improv, which is the complete opposite. How do those two worlds coexist?
So when you're right, when people hear classical piano, classical music, they think this really European tradition. It's very structured, it's very formal, and in a lot of ways, classical music is designed in that way. You know, it has that long history and tradition that comes through in the performances. You know, they're very formal performances. You know, you tend to wear black, you tend to, you know, walk out, you know, with a straight back, chin up, you know. Um, and there are some benefits to that because, you know, like there's you walk out with your chin up, there's nothing to be ashamed of, you know, all of that kind of stuff. That's a very good message to have in your tradition. But then when we think about improvisational traditions such as jazz, and the thing is that I don't call myself a jazz pianist because it's not what I'm trained in. We're thinking about a different approach to the music. We're thinking about one that's got a far more intuitive bent to it, one that relies on the ear and relies on being able to hear the music in your head as you're playing it, and then to make changes on the fly depending on where you want the music to go. Or in the case of jazz, jazz band musicians, looking at what's happening in the rest of the band, right? You know, you're being very responsive. Um, and the thing is that it's not that I think that classical music isn't responsive because there's always going to be that level of interpretation, you know, particularly when we're thinking about pieces that have been created so long ago that have then been brought to the modern day, and they're using potentially different instruments than what they were originally designed for, composed for. Um, there is that level of interpretation. And I would say, you know, although that might be a little bit controversial, that there is that kind of natural improvisation in that interpretive process. But what a lot of people don't realize is that in classical music traditions, going back all the way to Bach and Bach's son, so everyone knows J.S. Bach. So he has a son, C.P.E. Bach, and he's got this essay on the true art of playing musical instruments. You can have a look at it on the archive, the Internet Archive for free if you want. And in that, he details this, you know, strong improvisational focus that I think was kind of lost during the 18th and 19th centuries. I think mostly due to a lot of political reasons and, you know, formalized structures, but probably also because when we're thinking about the distribution of books and music, sheet music, for example, then suddenly you have a whole audience that isn't necessarily learning with a teacher, with a tradition, with a, you know, a heritage of ways of being and doing and knowing. They are instead attempting to pin their knowledge to the pieces themselves and learn from the pieces themselves, which is totally valid. But I think it does lend itself more to the idea of, well, we should play what's on the music and not necessarily stray from that a lot. So when I'm thinking about that improvisation and classical music kind of coexisting together, it's it's almost natural because you can segment classical music quite well and then, you know, do kind of a remix of all of those, like what we would might call stems, right? You know, you can remix all of them and create something that's new and that fits within the style. Yeah, and that's really why I would say classical music and improvisation, they go quite naturally together. Um, Even though there is this, you know, emphasis on examinations and, you know, the formalized structures, the sheet music, the formal performances, there is that underlying heritage that exists of improvisation.
Now, before I get out of your way and let you get ready to do your first three pieces of the night, I want to take a left turn and talk about something really quick. So there's a short slideshow that we have that I want everybody to see. So when we were having a conversation and you brought this up to me, I was immediately intrigued. I went to Googling, I went to seeing other people do it, and I was like, that's dope. Could I do it? Probably not. There's absolutely no way I can trust myself enough to do this. Can you bring that slideshow up for us, Yosh? So that's called fire dancing, everybody. I can't do it. The only fire I'm gonna deal with is when I light my cigar, when I light that barbecue pit. But twirling it around and not set myself on fire is something that I don't believe I can do. So tell me a little bit about that and what got you into it.
So it was something that I kind of stumbled into. I went to UNSW, a university in Sydney, and there was a circus society there, and it was O Week, my very first semester, and I walked past the stall and I just went, oh, a little bit of like, oh, shiny. And so I started doing it. And so that was back in 2009, 2008, sorry. And I've kind of just kept the practice going ever since. I've gone through periods of time where I haven't lit, but I've still twirled. I've taken that dance kind of and made it part of my practice. So quite often I'll actually do a session of practice before I sit down and play my music, because I find that connection is really part of like the embodiment of getting connected to yourself and your feelings, and then being able to express that through music. So I find that it almost like opens that channel, as it were.
That's dope. That's dope. Well, I am getting ready to get out of your way so we can get the first three pieces from you tonight. So, with that being said, the mic is yours.
Thank you. This first poem is called Balance. It was originally performed at the International Women's Day in Wagga Wagga in 2025. There's two pieces of information I think you'll appreciate. Osiris is the ancient Egyptian god of the underworld, death, and rebirth, and overseer of the field of reeds, where souls go to rest in peace for an eternity. Ma'at is the goddess, also from the Egyptian heritage, of truth, balance, cosmic order, law, morality, and justice. In this, she is representing the concept itself. Arpeggiate, skip the notes. Scales broken and skeletal, a heartbeat of rent keys, all dedicated to Ma'at. Plucking symphony of weight against a world of ordered truth, soul on the precarious brink of Assyrian fields of reeds. Was your life worth an eternity? Balance the scales, it's needed, between old ways and the new. The scale of life revealed as true through the many broken chords stemming from skull's skeleton. Justice is all now blinded, but no eyes are needed here to bear the scale of freedom. My second piece is Carnivali sung on heartstrings. It was originally performed as part of the Carnival of Souls by Joel Malcolm in Wagga Wagga. It's an ekphrastic piece of poetry. A soul is laid bare raw, blackened and a pure white, with a flash of color, red, blue, pearl, and yellow. Heart against a wire, helping us get nearer. Soul from the outside, set the hoop on fire and forget the nightly fever. Because there's not much more to say when it's all said and done. The coffin supports the clown, and we lay our heads to rest. A soul hidden mellow, flashing white on black, with a spin of contour, clown a jolly fellow, soul against a lyre, driving us towards it, circus from the inside. Set the hoop alight, sire, and make them jump through it. And my third piece for this bracket is called Fragments of a Soul. It's a prose poetry combination. So here we go. Pop! The needle bursts out from the underside of the fabric, and there's the unmistakable noise of metal and fabric in friction as it's pulled through, the thread hanging loosely in the hole left behind. Needle empowers creation. Needle is handled with care. Watch the sharp point for how the stitches fare. The light flashes, the thunder cracks, and the reflection shines bright into the fire dancer's eyes. The roar of burnt air thunders, increasing as they speed up the spin. They stop, there's too much kerosene, and roll the staff between two hands, releasing two high flames on either side. Energy flows from earth to soul. Fire draws it upwards, roasting. Away the metaphorical demons fly. At the end, a celebration, a toasting. The voice of Cicero accompanies them as they sketch an idea, the best defender of anybody. The questions are asked, the answers provided, and the dialogue continues while the artwork takes shape, each conversation adding to the design. If conversation is what makes us human, then who are we without others? The stories we use as inside jokes are the ways in which meaning gathers. She paces the corridors, sterile and green, to keep us all calm, she laughs morbidly. She hears the patient from room 3 at the piano again. It's never the same melody, but always the same bass line. It's calming in a way. When the sane break down, when the black feathered wings spread, each blade of grass a tiny samurai, the fortunate blind are led. His name is unimportant, for he is simply meat, flesh dancing on the end of the puppet strings. He leaps and falls to his knees, a choreographed despair. His long hair brushes his knees, then his back as he throws his head to the sky. The dance is the chance for one to be many and none. It's a serious business, this expression of fun.
I would love to see the image that you use for your ekphrastic poetry. I would love to actually see that picture. There's a there's a an amazing artist who's in the comments right now who taught me about that recently. So the fact that you just brought it up, that was great. That was dope, man. I love your first set. Snaps and claps, snaps and claps. Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. So at this moment in time, what we're getting ready to do is pay a few bills. We're gonna talk about some sponsorships, and then we're gonna get into our soundbite artist of the week. So, sponsors, as always, everybody, y'all know what it is. You have me, of course, Paul Cram, the poet. You also have Nice. You have TNT Business Consulting, and you definitely have Desi Beats. Please hit either one of us for any of creative or design needs. If we can't do it, we can point you in the right direction. Next, all things Pentellectual. If you would like to follow us, you can follow us at Facebook at Pentellectual Conversation as well as Instagram. You want to sponsor an episode or multiple episodes, please hit me up directly or that email right there. The link tree on the the link tree and that link right there, the QR code, if you would like to be a guest on Pentellectual Conversation as our hot topic. If you have music and would like to be the soundbite artist of the week, right there with that QR code, that's where you will go. Also, if you would like to support Pentellectual Conversations, our Cash App is right there. Because Pentellectual Conversations is more than just a show, it is a movement, and movement needs to be financed. And there's no donation that is too big or too small We accept all of them with pure love. Next, we have, you already know how this is gonna go. Sensual Saturdays, man, Money Edition, erotic poetry slam hosted by none other than the amazing General herself, Jay Simone, the spotlight artist, my big brother, the walking erotica, and also Divinity. You know she gonna be in that thing with the burlesque dancers, man. Y'all make sure y'all come on out. It's gonna have the games, food, BDSM demonstrations, and of course some of the type of poetry you'll ever want to hear. So this will be on I want to say the 29th, yeah, August 29th, 8 p.m. Get your tickets now. Get your tickets now. Next, BBC Poetry Fest 2026. This is night one right here. My homeboy Aziz Pulmonologist and his lovely wife Subliminal will be hosting. And guess what, y'all? Ebony, the goddess, Pentellectual's own, will be in the building. So make sure if you are in the Atlanta, Georgia area, Thursday, October 15th, 2026, make sure you come out and support, man. Beat me there. Don't meet me there. This is a 3-night event. And I'm not sure we have the flyer as of yet, but tomorrow, the party starts here on Tuesday, but it carries on to Wednesday. Meet me at the corner, Poppy's Poetry Corner, man, with one of the livest hosts on the internet, Keynotes, my sis. Love her to death. She gonna be there 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, right here on YouTube. So make sure y'all come on out for that. All right, so now it is time for the Soundbite Artist of the Week. And tonight we have a song called Ride by Carell. Let's get it. All right.
It's been a while, but I'm rocking with you. I've been thinking about just what I wanna give you. You want my time, well it's coming right up. It's been long enough, now you deserve my love. Say the word and you'll have your way. We'll play these little games that you wanna play. Boy, we grown and sexy, we ain't gotta worry about what they got to say. Now don't you wanna ride tonight? Don't you wanna feel this vibe tonight? Boy, I'm gonna take my time tonight. Don't it feel good? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's ride tonight. Don't you wanna feel this vibe tonight? Boy, I'm gonna take my time tonight. Don't it feel good? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You and me together, make lightning when we're alone. No matter the weather, our vibe is good and so strong. I'll be your lover, long as we take care of each other. Can it last forever? Hold tight, we gon' get that vibe and ride on. Don't you wanna ride on? Vibe and ride on. Let's spend the night, yeah. Vibe and ride. Let's ride. Let's ride. Let's ride.
Let's ride tonight. Don't you wanna feel this vibe tonight? Boy, I'm gonna take my time tonight. Don't it feel good? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Let's ride tonight. Don't you wanna feel this vibe tonight? Boy, I'm gonna take my time tonight. Don't it feel good? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Now don't you wanna ride through? Baby, won't you come and take my hand so I can slide through? And it's been a couple things that I wanna try too. Baby, let me know if you down so you can try too. Baby, it's me and you. We gon' do what we do. They can't see nothing cause we grown. Been waiting for the moment for us to be alone. We vibe in our zone, so let's set the tone. Now do you wanna ride tonight? Cause baby, it's on.
Let's ride tonight. Don't you wanna feel this vibe tonight? Boy, I'm gonna take my time tonight. Don't it feel good? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right. That was Career with Ride, man. It was a little bop, man. A little bop. All right. So let's bring our guest of honor. The hot topic. Haven is in the building. So let's get back into it, man. 'Cause this is something that I know that you're pretty passionate about, and I would love for you to educate those who don't understand or think they know. Uh, so you specialize in inclusive education. Okay. So what made accessibility and inclusion become such an important part of your work?
Well, part of it is personal, and then part of it is also it seems like the right thing to do, honestly. You know, the door should be open for everyone. You know, the conversations around making sure that inclusion is real and visible are important conversations to have. But it's also personal because I was one of those. I was one of those children who did need a little bit of extra support. You know, I had to relearn how to walk after I came to Australia, and you know, I didn't tie my shoelaces until I was 8. But that hasn't stopped me from, with the right support, being able to do all the things that I do in my life now. You know, I live a very busy and active life. And so from that personal perspective, I go, well, that support enables people to reach their potential. Without that support, we're actually losing out on people's abilities and contributions, not just to their own small groups, but also to society in a bigger kind of sense. But it's not just about what someone can do for society. It's also about what does a good society look like when we're thinking about what
Mm.
society can do for the individual. And that does need to look like support because at the end of the day, everyone needs some kind of support. You know, even those who live independently and, you know, develop on typical development timelines and all of that kind of stuff, you know, there's still support that we give each other as community that enable us to be able to have a good quality of life. So there's the personal side, there's the it's the right thing to do, and then I kind of, you know, have naturally stumbled into these conversations around, you know, what does teaching look like and how can we make it better and more accessible, more inclusive, more supportive, more scaffolded to ensure that people are actually learning, because the research says that as soon as we start putting in these accommodations and start creating those supports and scaffolds for students, you know, it's not just the students who visibly need support who benefit from those interventions. It's everyone in the class. Everyone benefits from having a society, a learning environment that is supportive of whatever the needs are, you know. And I know this is not a new idea, but I really appreciate the fact that it's coming to the forefront now in the education space to really start building what a better education system looks like, you know, one that, and it ties back to our conversation about classical versus improv, you know, one that's not just reliant on examinations and, you know, rote learning and, you know, doing it exactly the way that it's shown on the music, but instead asking, you know, what do you understand? How do you understand it? How do you show that understanding? And how do you then engage with that information and knowledge in a way that benefits you and the people that you love and care about? So yeah, like there's a lot there, but I wouldn't change my pathway at all.
So when we say inclusive music education, what does that actually mean beyond simply allowing everybody into the classroom?
It means more than letting everyone into the classroom. It means not having a discomfort around
Mm.
letting everybody into the classroom. You know, that's the very first step, is actually very teacher focused. You know, this is before we start talking about the students at all. It's that first step of going, well, I am comfortable with being able to support everyone who walks into my classroom. And that's really an education piece. That's really a development of that self-knowledge of the teacher to engage with the supports for those particular students. And recognizing that every single student who walks in through that door is going to need some form of support. It's just really a question of, well, what are you comfortable providing as a teacher? And so we want to kind of encourage teachers to become more comfortable at providing appropriate supports for all students. And a lot of that is education at that kind of next level. But from the student perspective, that looks like having your needs met. It looks like the teacher being patient enough to say, to say the same thing in 3 different ways, because that's going to, like, one of them will click. It involves being able to listen to your student and say, okay, well, what do you need? And being able to provide them with the language, if they need it, to, tell what is needed in that particular circumstance. It involves being flexible and resilient. So a lot of it is about engaging teachers where they're at, to bring them into that kind of inclusive space where they then feel really comfortable using all of these strategies to be able to give the best education that they can to anyone who walks in through the door,
All right. So I'm pretty sure for like with everything, there's barriers. So are there some barriers in traditional music education that people, well, without experience in that world may not even realize is a barrier?
Yes, definitely. So there's quite a lot of research on this as well. And this is part of what I've been talking about in my thesis. So, we've talked a little bit about the barriers that exist in classical music training and the classical music world in general. There's a particularly nice article that I've referenced quite a few times, and the title is "Classical Music Has a Diversity Problem." So that's the first barrier, is that, when we're in environments, it's easy to replicate what we see rather than what is a real representation of who the people are that are engaging with that environment. So there's a bit of a visibility problem in classical music, but at the same time, when we're thinking about the process of engaging with classical music in the first place, we're thinking about an activity that's historically been quite privileged.
Mhm.
I mentioned before that I felt like I was in a very privileged position to have the hour a day to devote to developing my skill. But it's not just time, it's also accessing lessons. It's being able to engage with the notation. And these are all expected parts of the classical music pathway that involves exams and formal performances and all of that kind of stuff. But what I would really like to do is invite people to look at classical music in a slightly different way, so that we de-emphasize the idea of examinations as being a indicator of someone's skill, and instead start looking at them as experiences. And so thinking then about them as experiences allows teachers like myself to turn around and go, okay, well, sorry, let's make sure that the student has a good experience with their examination. It shouldn't be a source of unnecessary stress, in my opinion. And we're also thinking then about that emphasis on notation. There's some research that's come out that says that being able to play by ear is an incredible benefit for musicians. And it's something that's really de-centered when we're thinking about the classical music traditional pathway. And so when I'm teaching, I tend to engage my students in a lot of ear work. So we're constantly singing and modeling, and they know what the piece is expected to sound like. And the thing is that I do choose expected to very carefully. I don't say should sound like, because I think that needs to be a space for students to be able to be encouraged to improvise and to interpret and to tell new stories with these older ones, to essentially become that little bit of a remix artist for these ideas that come to us from a long, long heritage and a long history as well.
Okay. Oh, I feel like I'm learning.
Excellent.
Okay, I have a couple more questions before I get back out of your way for your final three pieces of the evening. Music education sometimes become heavily focused on techniques, grades, examinations, getting everything exactly right. And as you just said, that you still try to make the wiggle room for improvisation. So, what I would like to know is, how do you protect the students' creativity while still teaching the discipline that's needed for the class?
Part of it is about choosing the appropriate resources. I choose resources that allow for that kind of expansion of skill whilst also working on specific skills. And so one of the examples that I use, and one that I've written about extensively in my thesis, is Weaving Sounds by Chi and Yazzie. It's a 2024 book, and it's a beginner set of repertoire pieces. And we use that to unlock the idea of modes, of consonance and dissonance. We talk about the engaging of story with the production of music, so that there's always that underlying, we're telling a story here. In terms of protecting the students' creativity, it's choosing those resources, but it's also the attitude that is brought to the conversation. Because when I'm thinking about a student's creativity, I never want to be turning around and discouraging that. I'm always encouraging that. So we build in improvisation practice from the very early lessons. I'll set up a baseline for them and get them to put a melody on top. And we start composition quite early as well, just simple things, but they're unlocking those doorways so that the student can approach that task in the future as they develop more skills and they feel more confident and they have, bigger stories to tell. They can open that door and say, well, this is something that I've actually been doing for a really long time. This is something that's not scary, that's not intimidating, that's not novel, that I know how to do, that I was encouraged to do. And now that just is so freeing to be able to then open the door to tell those bigger stories, tell their own stories, because that's really my teaching ethos, is that, yes, we are going to learn the prior stories. The history is important, the context is important, understanding what came before is all important. But realistically, at the end of the day, as a musician, you should be telling your own story, and it's almost inescapable. You can't not tell your own story. We just need to recognize that that's what we're doing.
Now, you've worked in both music education and higher education. If you could change one thing about the way schools or universities approach creativity, music, inclusion, what would you change first?
What would I change first? I mean, there's quite a few things that I would change, and there's a lot of work being done in Australia at the moment in terms of inclusive education, where a lot of those things are changing. So it's really going to depend on context as to where people are at, because that's a big part of my teaching ethos as well, is to take people from where they're at to where they want to be. And so when I'm thinking about the current state of university and school education in Australia, I would say that there needs to be better training around specific scaffolds for students. There needs to be a greater awareness in the kind of student population about differences and how they can impact. And, a greater compassion, I think, as well. But that's going to be different depending on where I'm talking about. If I'm talking about inclusive education where you are, you know, but I don't know your context quite as much. There might be other things, you know. We need to open the door, right? Like, you know, that's where some schools and university systems are at, you know, where the door needs to be opened in the first place. So that's kind of where I would prioritize. I would go, you know, what's the context here? You know, if the question is one of diversity in the first place, we really need that door to be open. We need to be able to create those ramps and, you know, abilities to access education for everyone. Once you're past that, and I think that's probably the biggest hurdle, once you're past that, then it's just about education. Then it's just about understanding the scaffolding, understanding conditions, understanding your students, listening to what they need. You know, it becomes a very student-centered process once that door is open.
Now, I have one more question before I get on out the way and let you do your thing one more time. Years from now, if somebody hears your name, whether they remember you as a musician, an educator, or just simply just a cool ass person, what do you hope they say you contributed to the world?
You know what? I looked at this question and I thought about it for a long time. And at the end of the day, I came to the conclusion that above everything, I just want to be remembered as maybe kind and maybe having made a bit of a difference.
All right. So, Tabin, with that being said, the mic is again yours.
Thank you. So these are some unpublished at this point poems, so that you're the first audience for them. The first one's called Metamorphosis. A light touch of a summer's breeze rocks the quintessential cocoon, its contents pouring at night's ease, unmending it stares at the moon. Reconstruction of parts to a final whole, a journey taken once to a beautiful end. I sit and I wonder, not to be droll, does caterpillar know the butterfly blend? Or is it a journey ruled by instinct, a slow wrapping to become strange? Safely in the cocoon ends the stint of the caterpillar who becomes change. I hope you'll see the metaphor of the unmending and the range to the journey we all take as editor of our lives in this beautiful exchange. Humans are like butterflies, or perhaps more like caterpillars, flying over the lows and the highs, cocooning us around life's pillars. We know not the end of the journey as we take our first steps to it, walking down paths torpid and ferny, or navigating rapids with grit. Our metamorphosis dramatized is delightful process unending. The capacity for change is prized. Mayhap we are cocoon unmending. My second one for this bracket is Together in Healing. Our ancestors and your ancestors shine as stars amongst the sky of hopes. Kings with paupers, victims and jesters, our histories construct us as tropes. The mistakes of the past don't make us as much as they break us, break our heart. Who wins and who loses in time's fuss, hopes we all agree a new path to chart. Trite verses, apologies are abound. The problem is big, it takes us all, until fears, wishes, hopes and dreams are bound to whom they belong after the squall. For most of our history is shared, but there is much that is lost forever, accessible to those few that cared, placed in a retrospect or never. Trite verses might see hope in a loss for sure that is a way to go on. And a rolling stone gathers no moss, but we are all one under the hot sun. And the last one is one of my thesis songs. Actually, so it is song poetry. It will be presented when I submit, just under 30 days. So it's called Lock Us In, LOC. It's referencing both locking in as a musician, but it's also referencing the mode that the song was created in, which is Locrian. It's usually unresolved. And this is really about my own positionality. A vision of the self-same future. We walk together in peace. The veil is opened. The door is used. We're weaving connection with community support. Britannia's birds have flown the coop. Don't get stuck in the loop. The loop. It's me, the dreamer, walker, seer, painting with words, light and shade. We're working together to uplift all. There's so much to stand for. There's so much to weep for. And now it's time for us to be proud, strong, and free.
Oh man, one more time, everybody, man. Let's snap some claps for Tabin.
Thank you.
All right, so before we end the show, because we still have one more segment that we're gonna do. But before we get to that, you have some things coming up.
I do.
All right, so let's talk about that real quick, and then I want you to let everybody know your social medias where they can follow you and continue to follow your journey and your work. So go ahead and bring that flyer up. I'm not gonna say that word. If I try to say that word, if people that know me know I will mess a word up bad. So I will let you just talk about it on your own.
Sounds good. So this is the Wiradjuri drag pageant. Wiradjuri is the name of the local Indigenous peoples of the area in which I live, the Riverina region in New South Wales. And I am performing not as a drag queen, not as a drag king, but instead as a drag thing. I'm going to be a firebird out on stage. So if you are local, or even if you really want to fly in from overseas, come and book a ticket and a seat, and it's going to be a great show.
Awesome. All right, so where can they find you on social media if they want to follow you? Like, how can they follow your pen?
So I'm most followable on Instagram. So that's tab123in, and that's my main kind of point of contact from a musical perspective. It's where I post my kind of ongoing diary of what I'm up to. If you do want to check out some of my more formal work, I do have a website, which is tabinbrooks.com, and that's where you'll find all of my kind of more academic work. If you're looking for music, artwork, fire dancing, go to Instagram though.
Right. Well, on behalf of Pentellectual Conversations, I want to say thank you so much for finding time, making time to be our hot topic. Y'all, it's tomorrow. Tomorrow where they at right now. Like, it's tomorrow where they at right now. So I appreciate you time traveling and coming back to today to be our hot topic. With that being said, we're gonna remove you from the stage, and you have a great one. Thank you so much for being our guest. That was pretty cool, man. That was pretty cool. But y'all know what time it is. It's time for that old mic drop. Okay. So there's a difference between making room for somebody and lowering the standard for somebody. Sometimes people seem to confuse the two. Inclusion doesn't mean everybody gets a trophy. It means everybody deserves a chance to get into the game. It means you don't look at somebody's disability, background, education, circumstances, age, race, gender, or whatever makes them different and decide what they are capable of before they ever get an opportunity to show you. Because some of us have spent our entire lives being judged by doors that we were never allowed to walk through. Somebody looked at us and said, "You probably can't do that. That might be too difficult. Maybe you should try something different." And sometimes those voices became so loud that eventually we started repeating them to ourselves. But understand this: you do not need somebody else's imagination to be big enough to hold your own potential. The room wasn't built with you in mind. Walk away from it. There isn't a chair waiting for you at the table. Bring one. And when you finally get your seat, don't ask anybody to lower the expectations because you arrived. Raise them. Let your work speak. Let your discipline speak. Let your talent speak. Because equality isn't asking somebody to make the finish line closer. It's making sure everybody actually gets a starting line. So stop allowing people who've never seen the full version of you to write the limitations of you. They don't get to decide how far you can go, and they don't get to decide what you can become. And they damn sure don't get to decide that you don't belong in the room. Sometimes making space for people doesn't change the standard. Sometimes it finally gives us the opportunity to see just how high the standard could have been all along. This is Paul Cram the Poet telling you to make sure you tune in next week here at Pentellectual Conversations, where dope poetry, deep dialogue, and unapologetically real energy will always reside. And with that being said, we out!
Thank you for vibing with us. We hope tonight's conversation inspired a creative spark in you. So go out and show the world who you really are. And we'll see you next time on Pentellectual Conversations.